Hello. Welcome to episode 12 of the ShopLogic podcast. I am your host, Adrienne. If it's your first time listening, you might be wondering, what is ShopLogic? Well, on this podcast, I discuss all things pertaining to ethical consumerism, mindful consumerism, conscious consumerism, whatever you like to call it. It is your source to learn how what we buy affects you, others, animals, and the planet. ShopLogic is a project I started, which actually turned into a website, app, the podcast you're listening to, and soon to be an ethical brand certifier. It's a database, essentially, to answer all of your questions about the things we shop for. On this podcast, you can learn how to buy better, read labels, and be aware of how purchases impact our health, environment, animals, and laborers. I discuss anything and everything pertaining to what we shop for, including food, personal care, cosmetics, fashion, and much, much more. So find out how you can shop guilt-free, know which brands to choose, and make a positive impact directly on animals, people, and the planet simply by knowing what to buy and what to avoid. On today's episode 12, I will be discussing gardening, locally grown food, fertilizers, pesticides, GMOs, soil depletion, composting, native plants for wildlife, farmers markets, spring seasonal foods, community gardens, CSAs, the Roots of Our Food kids book, written and illustrated by yours truly, and it's all because April is National Garden Month. So let's get right into it. The first topic is growing your own food. Ethical consumers are often drawn to home gardening because it gives us full control over how food is produced. That way, we can avoid synthetic pesticides and fertilizers. We reduce carbon footprints, so no long distance transport. It's right in your backyard or on your deck, front yard, patio, whatever. And encourages seasonal local eating. Some popular crops might be tomatoes, herbs, leafy greens, and beans. And a lot of people follow principles of composting to turn these food scraps into nutrient-rich soil. Here are some organic and regenerative practices. Ethical gardening emphasizes soil health and biodiversity. Organic methods avoid harmful chemicals. Regenerative gardening restores soil ecosystems. And companion planting reduces pests naturally. So this aligns with biodiversity and climate-conscious food systems. Pollinator-friendly gardening is going to support bees, butterflies, and other pollinators. You can plant native flowers and include flowering herbs like lavender and basil. This connects to concerns about pollution and global food security. Ethical consumers often favor growing foods that have a lower environmental impact. These would be things like vegetables, fruits, and legumes. There's less reliance on animal agriculture, and this is often tied to vegan and vegetarian lifestyles. It also relates to awareness of the carbon footprints of food. There's zero waste in circular gardening. Reducing waste is key. Composting kitchen scraps, saving seeds for future planting, and reduce containers and water. Saving seeds is going to preserve heirloom varieties and resist corporate control of seeds. Fair trade and ethical sourcing, so this is beyond the garden. Even gardeners buy some foods they can't grow. You can look for fair trade products, support local farmers markets and co-ops, and avoid exploitive labor practices. There's also community and urban gardening. Ethical food is also about access and justice. Community gardens increase food access. Urban agriculture reduces food deserts and encourages shared knowledge and sustainability. It matters because people interested in food gardening usually care about environmental protection, personal health, animal welfare, and social justice. Here is more of an expansion on ethical gardening, food production, pesticides, GMOs, and fertilizers. Pesticides are chemicals or natural substances used to control pests, but they do raise concerns about health and ecosystems. Those concerns would be ones like harming beneficial insects like bees, which are absolutely critical for pollination. Pesticides may contaminate soil and water. Pesticides, in some cases, are linked to human health risks, and a major issue is pesticides' role in declining biodiversity. Some ethical alternatives would be neem oil and insecticidal soaps, which have lower toxicity. Companion planting, things like marigolds to deter pests. This companion planting idea is to have certain plants next to each other that act as a natural deterrent from bugs that could eat your crops, for instance. Then we have physical barriers like netting and encouraging natural predators like ladybugs and birds, which help keep away the pests that might invade and eat your plants that you're trying to grow. Many ethical gardeners follow integrated pest management, which uses minimal chemicals and focuses on prevention. GMOs stand for genetically modified organisms, and GMOs are crops altered using genetic engineering to improve traits like pest resistance or yield. GMOs also are controversial because they alter produce like fruits and vegetables, for instance, to be able to withstand the really strong chemicals and pesticides, unnatural pesticides, and fertilizers that they spray on them. The concerns are that corporate control of seeds, they have these patents by large agribusinesses. So yeah, they actually have these industries that control seeds, which is quite frightening. Reduced seed sovereignty for farmers and potential ecological risks, meaning cross-pollination with wild plants. But the potential benefits would be that higher yields can reduce land use, some crops require fewer pesticides, and it can improve nutrition, for instance, fortified foods. This all falls under genetic engineering. What ethical gardeners do is they prefer heirloom or open pollinated seeds, and they save their own seeds from year to year, and they support biodiversity over uniform crops. Fertilizers, feeding the soil responsibly. Fertilizers add nutrients to soil, but the type of fertilizer does matter. Synthetic fertilizers, these are ones to watch out for. They are often driven from fossil fuels. What is not? It seems like everything these days comes from fossil fuels. That is very surprising. So fertilizers can be derived from fossil fuels. They often are. They can cause water pollution through runoff, and many degrade long-term soil health. So that is a major concern because a lot of our nutrients, minerals, vitamins come from soil. Ethical alternatives: compost, manure from responsibly raised animals, although that might be a bit stinky, green manure, cover crops like clover, and natural minerals, rock phosphate, for instance. These approaches align with regenerative agriculture, focusing on building soil rather than just feeding plants. Here's how it all connects. Pesticides impact ecosystems and human health. GMOs raise questions about control, biodiversity, and technology. Fertilizers influence soil, water, and climate. Together, these shape the broader idea of sustainable food systems and responsible consumption. A practical, ethical approach: many people don't go 100% strict. Rather, you're going to aim for balance instead. Grow some food organically at home, buy organic or fair trade when you can, and support local farms using sustainable practices. And stay informed rather than relying on labels. Soil depletion, as I mentioned, is a huge piece of ethical food conservation. It connects directly to pesticides, GMOs, and fertilizers. And a lot of people are concerned not just with what they grow, but whether the soil itself is being sustained or degraded over time. What is soil depletion? Soil depletion happens when soil loses nutrients, structure, and life faster than it can regenerate. It affects your crop yield, nutritional quality of food, and long-term food security. Having healthy soil depends on living systems tied to biodiversity like microbes, fungi, insects, and organic matter. What are some causes of soil depletion today? The overuse of synthetic fertilizers. These synthetic fertilizers can boost short-term growth, but come at a price because they often replace natural nutrient cycles instead of restoring them. They reduce microbial life in soil, and they lead to dependency. The soil becomes less naturally fertile. Runoff also contributes to water pollution and ecosystem damage. So if it were to rain and the synthetic fertilizers get washed down the hill and into the creek, yes, then you're going to see this water pollution and the effects on wildlife. Pesticides don't just kill pests, they can harm beneficial soil organisms by disrupting soil food webs, by reducing earthworms and microbes, and by interfering with processes like nutrient cycling, which weaken soil structure and resilience over time. Monocropping and industrial farming. You may have heard of monocropping. It's growing the same crop repeatedly, which is really common in large-scale agriculture. This is bad because it drains specific nutrients from the soil. It reduces soil diversity, and it increases reliance on chemicals. This is one reason a lot of ethical consumers prefer diverse, smaller-scale systems. Erosion and land mismanagement. Tilling and and deforestation expose soil to wind and rain. Topsoil, which is the most fertile layer, is lost quickly, and climate change worsens droughts and erosion. So globally, soil loss is occurring faster than natural regeneration in many, many regions. GMOs' indirect role. GMOs themselves don't directly cause soil depletion, but some GMO systems encourage the monocropping. Herbicide-resistant crops can increase chemical use, so the concern is more about the farming systems around the GMOs tied to genetic engineering. And why do we care? Well, soil depletion isn't just an environmental issue, it's about the future of food. Less fertile soil equals lower quality nutrition for our health. It increases reliance on chemicals, and it's a threat to long-term sustainability. It directly impacts the carbon footprint of food because degraded soil stores less carbon and contributes to climate change. So here are some solutions. I'm not just going to present a problem and have this be like a totally negative episode. So here are some solutions. Building soil, not just using it. Regenerative gardening and farming. Practices aligned with regenerative agriculture aim to restore soil health. No-till or low-till gardening. Cover crops, which protect and enrich soil. Compost and organic matter inputs, and crop rotation. The next solution is composting and organic fertility. Using composting is going to feed soil microbes, improve water retention, and reduce the need for synthetic fertilizers. Biodiversity in the garden, mixed crops instead of monoculture, pollinator-friendly plants, and encouraging soil organisms, which is going to strengthen natural systems and resilience. Local and ethical sourcing. Even beyond your own garden, you can support farms that prioritize soil health, look for regenerative or organic practices, and reduce reliance on industrial agriculture. The big picture. Ethical gardening today is shifting from how do I grow the most food to how do I grow food without degrading the system that produces it. And soil is at the center of that shift. Without healthy soil, even the most ethical choices like organic labels, reduced pesticides, or GMO debates don't fully address the root issue. Yes, pun intended. And since I mentioned composting, you might be wondering how you too can integrate this to your backyard. It's one of the most practical and impactful habits for ethical consumers because it directly reduces waste, lowers emissions, and supports healthier ecosystems. Here is a clear, grounded look at what it means and why it matters. Composting is the controlled breakdown of organic waste, like your food scraps and your yard trimmings, like when you mow the grass, into nutrient-rich soil. It relies on natural processes involving microorganisms, oxygen, and moisture. At its core, it's an application of the scientific concept of biodegradation, turning waste back into a resource. Composting reduces landfill impact. Composting will cut methane emissions, reduce landfill volume, and keep organic material in a natural cycle. It supports sustainable food systems through regenerative agriculture, soil conservation, and reduced chemical dependency. It closes the consumption loop. Ethical consumption isn't just about what you buy, it's about what happens afterwards. Composting creates a circular system, returning nutrients to the earth instead of treating them as waste. And when you compost, you become aware of how much food waste actually exists. A lot of people will naturally buy more intentionally, waste less food, and shift towards whole unpackaged foods. So here's what you can compost: fruit and vegetable scraps, coffee grounds and filters, eggshells, and yard waste like leaves and grass. But you want to avoid composting meat and dairy, oily foods, or plastics, even if they say they're biodegradable, unless they're certified compostable. So here are some methods. You could do backyard composting in simply a pile or a bin in your yard, and this is best for those with outdoor space. You could even do indoor small space option. You could even do indoor small space composting through countertop bins and drop-off programs, and worm composting. Vermicomposting is what that's also called, and municipal composting. Many cities now offer curbside compost pickup, which is ideal if you don't want to manage it yourself. So definitely consider composting if it is a practical, realistic, and accessible option for you. Next, I'm going to talk about wildlife plants. In other words, native plants for wildlife, like bees, birds, and butterflies. So, this is if you're looking to support wildlife. By planting native species, it's one of the most impactful things you can do. Native plants have evolved alongside local ecosystems, meaning they naturally support pollinators and without the need for heavy watering, fertilizers, or pesticides. Why do native plants matter? Ethically and ecologically, they support biodiversity. Native plants are essential for native insects, which are the foundation of the food chain. They help pollinators. Many bees and butterflies only feed on very specific native plants. And they reduce chemical use. They're adapted to local conditions, so fewer pesticides and fertilizers are needed. They conserve water. Deep root systems make them drought tolerant. And they fight climate change. They improve soil health and store carbon. Here are the best ones. Here are the best native plants for bees. Bees need nectar and pollen across seasons. So we have the coneflower. This has a long bloom time and it's loved by many bee species. Bee balm. This is a rich nectar source for bees and also great for hummingbirds. Black-eyed Susans. Those are super easy to grow and widely beneficial. Goldenrod. Critical late season food, and it's often misunderstood as causing allergies. If you have seasonal allergies like I do, don't worry about goldenrod. It is not going to be a source of your sneezing and itchy, watery eyes. The best native plants for butterflies are the following: milkweed, essential for monarchs; Joe Pye weed, tall nectar-rich favorite; asters, late season blooms for migrating butterflies; and passion flower. It's a host plant for several butterfly species. Butterflies need both nectar plants and host plants for caterpillars before they become butterflies. And here are the best native plants for birds. Birds rely on seeds, berries, and insects supported by native plants. Serviceberry, early berries for birds; elderberry, a high-energy fruit source; oak trees support hundreds of insect species, which is bird food; and switchgrass, good for seeds and shelter. Buy from native plant nurseries rather than big box stores when possible. Choose local ecotypes, which are plants grown from local seed stock. Skip invasive species, even if they're marketed as pollinator friendly, and leave some mess, some fallen leaves and some stems. Those are good for overwintering insects. You can replace part of your lawn with native meadow or pollinator patches. Add a shallow water source for birds and insects, and plant in clusters to make it easier for pollinators to find their resources. Aim for some continuous blooms from early spring to late fall. And keep in mind the region you live in matters. So the exact best plants are just going to depend on your local ecosystem. Next up for our garden-themed podcast would be farmers markets and spring seasonal foods. Spring is one of the best times to reconnect with food in a more ethical, sustainable way, especially via farmers markets and seasonal eating. Here is a clear, grounded guide to help you make thoughtful choices. Why do farmers markets matter? Farmers markets aren't just cute weekend outings. They're one of the most direct ways to support ethical food systems. They are short supply chains. You're buying directly from growers, reducing transport emissions. There's transparency. You can ask the farmers directly how their food is grown, if they utilize organic practices, if they use pesticides, what the labor conditions are, and you're supporting small farms. This is keeping money in local communities instead of large agribusinesses. And then there's less packaging waste. A lot of vendors avoid plastic-heavy packaging. What should you look for at a good market? Farmers, not resellers. Seasonal produce, it's a big clue that it's local. Organic or low spray practices, even if it's not certified. You can ask questions like, how do you manage pests, or is this grown nearby? And the ethical producers are usually happy to answer. They're very proud of their methods. Spring foods in season, and this is for the United States. Eating seasonally is one of the easiest ways to reduce your environmental footprint, and I like it because you are kind of following the trends of the year. You are eating something that is super fresh. It's natural because it's meant to be there at that time of the year. It's not like grown towards the equator where there's like a year-round summer and transported halfway across the world. Instead, it's hopefully from pretty close by. So that's why I like to do seasonal foods. There's lots of benefits to eating seasonally. Here are some foods that appear in early spring, in March and April. asparagus, radishes, spinach, arugula, green onions, lettuce, and peas, like snap peas and snow peas. Mid to late spring, you're going to have, and this would be like in May and June, you're going to have strawberries, rhubarb, carrots, beets, new potatoes, and artichokes. Seasonal eating is more ethical because you're going to have a lower carbon footprint. There's less need for heated greenhouses or long distance shipping. There's better water usage. Crops grown in natural conditions need fewer resources. You're supporting biodiversity and you're encouraging crop variety instead of monoculture. And you're wasting less food. So the fresher the food, it lasts a lot longer. Here are some tips when shopping at farmers markets. Bring a reusable bag. Buy ugly produce, which is going to reduce waste. Like, it doesn't have to be the most perfect looking pepper. If you buy this uglier produce, it just means that it is not going to go in the landfill. Shop later in the day for discounts. This helps farmers avoid unsold goods. Choose plant-heavy foods more often. They're going to have a much lower impact than meat. And some simple spring meal ideas. You could do a spinach and strawberry salad with nuts, roasted asparagus and new potatoes, radish, vegan butter, and sourdough, and a fresh pea pasta. Ethical eating is not about perfection. It's about better patterns. So buy local when possible, eat what's in season, waste less, and ask more questions to your local farmers. So what about community gardens and CSAs? Community gardens and CSAs, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture, these are programs that are two of the most practical ways that ethical consumers can align their values with how they get their food. They both shorten the distance between people and their food sources, but they are a little bit different. So a community garden is a shared piece of land where people collectively grow food, flowers, and herbs. How do they work? Individuals or families either share the whole space or rent small plots. Members collaborate on planting, watering, composting, and harvesting, and some gardens donate surplus foods to local food banks. They are local and low impact. It's going to cut down on transportation and packaging, food sovereignty. People have direct control over how the food is grown. Community building. This encourages cooperation, education, and social ties, and biodiversity, often including heirloom and non-commercial crops. So the trade-off is it does require time and physical effort, but that could be a very therapeutic practice to integrate into your schedule. Access can be limited depending on where you live, and yields can vary based on weather and skill level. So moving on to CSAs, Community Supported Agriculture. This might be something that you are unfamiliar with, so I hope you are learning something new. A CSA is a system where consumers can subscribe to a farm and receive regular shares of its harvest. How does it work? You pay up front, usually seasonal, and each week you receive a box of whatever is currently being harvested. It's always a surprise and it's really fun because it gives you the opportunity to try new foods that you might not have thought about trying. You are supporting small farmers, providing stable income and reducing their financial risk. You're eating seasonally, so this encourages eating what's naturally available. And there's transparency. You often know exactly where and how your food was grown, and it's less wasteful, minimal packaging, and shorter supply chains. So the trade-off is you don't have as much choice, you just get what you get, whatever's in season, and upfront costs can be higher, though often cheaper in the long term, and it requires flexibility and being open-minded in terms of cooking and meal planning. Gardens empower individuals and neighborhoods, and CSAs strengthen local farming economies. And together, they push back against industrial agriculture and align with ideas from movements like Slow Food Movement, which promotes local, sustainable, and fair food systems. You can search online for some local community gardens through city programs or nonprofits, and you could search for CSA directories like Local Harvest. And you could start small, just join a garden or split a CSA, share with a friend. So those were all tips and info on topics pertaining to gardening, because again, April is National Garden Month. And lastly, pertaining to today's episode, which was all about growing food and gardening and agricultural appreciation, I wrote and illustrated a book called The Roots of Our Food. It is a kid's book about healthy eating and food from farm to table. It is part of the Conscious Kids collection of books that I made that are a total of 4 books that you can check out. You just simply Google them, search online. The Roots of Our Food is available on Amazon. currently in paperback for $12.99, but you can absolutely preview it for free. There's even an audiobook that I recorded for The Roots of Our Food, which was really fun. A little fun project with a lot of sound effects, so you could check that out. Also on Amazon audiobooks. You can preview it for free, like I mentioned, Kindle Unlimited, and I think there might even be a YouTube video where you could check it out. It's also available at some local libraries, so you can see if it is at your local library. But I will read you the description I wrote on the back of the book. Finally, a children's book that promotes plant-based eating. As the title suggests, The Roots of Our Food takes an inquisitive child on a journey to discover the origins of their meal. The kid encounters a farmer who explains how seeds grow into fruits, veggies, and more. Farmer Joe also teaches young readers about green practices such as shopping at farmers markets, buying locally, and the importance of families cooking whole foods together. Although The Roots of Our Food does not mention the word vegan, it has deliberately excluded farm animals, meat, and animal-derived foods, and instead celebrates plant-based eating. Mindfulness, gratitude, and compassion are themes of this rhyming story. It's available in paperback, ebook, and audio formats, recommended for children ages 2 to 8, preschool through 3rd grade, and the contents of this book do not include farm animals, animal food products, or byproducts, and is suitable for vegan kids and vegan families. Let us restore our lost connection with wholesome, healthy foods and the origins from which they come. The Roots of Our Food is part of the Conscious Kids collection of books that support early teachings of ethical consumerism. So do check that out. Well, thank you so much, as always, for listening to this episode. Have a great National Garden Month in the month of April. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.